Why does your paycheck disappear in 5 days while your neighbor's money seems to multiply? It is not about working harder. There is a 3,000-year-old seal that wealthy Jewish families use every April to stop money from leaking out of their homes. And I'm going to show you exactly how to activate it with just salt, 1 coin, and a glass jar. But before I reveal this ancient practice that has preserved prosperity through exiles, persecutions, and the collapse of empires, I need you to do something right now. If you sense that there is a level of abundance, you have not yet unlocked a blessing that is already yours, but somehow keeps slipping through your fingers, then press the like button on this video. By doing so, you are not just supporting this channel, you are making a declaration to the universe that you are ready to receive. You are opening a door in the invisible world, and when you subscribe, you ensure that these teachings, these ancient keys that have been hidden for generations, continue to reach you without you having to search for them in the chaos of the world. Now write these words in the comments below. Write them exactly as I say them. My money has roots, it stays and multiplies. Do not wait until the end of this video. Do not tell yourself you'll do it later. Write it now. Because when hundreds of souls decree the same truth together, the truth stops being a hope and becomes a law in the spiritual realm. Your written word in community carries a force that your solitary thought cannot match. Write it now. Good. Now we begin. Let me ask you a question that lives in the back of your mind, but you rarely speak aloud. Why is it that some families, no matter what storms come, no matter what the economy does, no matter how the world shifts around them, always seem to have enough? Not just enough to survive, but enough to thrive, enough to give, enough to build something that lasts beyond their own lifetime. And then there are other families, good people, hardworking people, honest people who sacrifice sleep and health and time with their children, and yet the money never stays. It comes in on Friday, and by Wednesday it is gone. Not because they are foolish, not because they waste it on meaningless things, but because it simply will not remain. You have felt this, have you not? You receive your payment, your salary, your income from whatever work you do, and within days, sometimes within hours, you can feel it slipping away. The bills appear, the car breaks down, the child needs something for school. An emergency that was not in any budget suddenly demands your attention. And you're left wondering if you are cursed, if you are doing something wrong, if there is some invisible hand pushing you back down every time you try to rise. I want you to understand something that will change the way you see money forever. The problem is not your work ethic. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is not even the amount you earn. The problem is that you are trying to fill a vessel that has cracks in it. You are pouring water into a jar with holes at the bottom, and no matter how fast you pour, no matter how much you pour, the water will not stay, because the container itself is compromised. This is not a metaphor I invented yesterday. This is a principle that appears in the most ancient texts of my people in the words of the prophet Haggai, who spoke to a generation that was working themselves to exhaustion, but could not understand why prosperity would not come. He said, "You have sown much, but harvested little. You eat, but are not satisfied. You drink, but are not filled. You clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages puts them into a bag with holes." A bag with holes. Do you see it? The issue was never the amount of seed they planted. The issue was never how hard they worked. The issue was that something in the spiritual architecture of their lives had broken down. There were openings, invisible cracks, through which the blessing leaked out as fast as it came in. Now you might be thinking, "Rabbi, I do not live in ancient Israel. I live in the modern world. I have bills to pay, credit cards, to manage rent. that is due on the first of every month. What does a 2,000-year-old prophecy have to do with my bank account? And this is precisely why most people stay trapped in the same financial condition their entire lives, because they believe that money is only a physical reality. They believe that if they just work more hours, if they just find a better job, if they just cut more expenses, then everything will change. But it does not change, because they are treating the symptom, not the cause. Money, my friend, is not just paper and metal. Money is energy. Money is a river that flows according to laws that most people cannot see. And if you do not understand those laws, if you do not know how to align yourself with them, then you will spend your entire life swimming against the current, exhausted, frustrated, wondering why others seem to glide effortlessly while you are drowning. Let me tell you something that historians and economists have observed for decades, but few have the courage to say out loud. The Jewish people represent less than 0.2% of the world's population. You could gather every Jewish person on the planet, and we would not fill a mid-sized country. And yet, we have produced more than 20% of all Nobel Prize winners in history. We have built some of the most successful businesses, financial institutions, and networks of generational wealth the world has ever seen. Coincidence? Luck? Good genes? No, it is consequence. It is the result of a living, breathing, active relationship with principles that transcend time, that survived the destruction of temples, the burning of cities, the scattering of families across every continent. My ancestors were expelled from their homes again and again. They lost everything repeatedly. And yet, within a generation, within sometimes a single decade, they rebuilt. They rose again, and they did not rise by accident. They rose because they carried something with them that could not be taken by any army, could not be burned by any fire, could not be stolen by any tyrant. They carried the knowledge of the covenant, and one of the oldest, one of the most powerful, one of the most hidden practices within that covenant is what I am going to reveal to you today. It is called the Brit HaMelach, the covenant of salt. And before you dismiss this as superstition, before your rational mind tells you that salt is just something you put on your food, let me explain to you why salt of all things became the symbol of the most permanent, the most unbreakable agreement between heaven and earth. Salt does not decay. Think about that for a moment. We live in a world where everything rots, fruit spoils, meat putrefies, wood crumbles, metal rusts. Even stone, given enough time, erodes into dust. Everything in nature tends toward decomposition. Everything except salt. Salt remains. Salt endures. Salt preserves whatever it touches. Before refrigerators, before freezers, before all the technology we take for granted today, how do you think ancient civilizations kept their food from rotting during long journeys, during harsh winters, during times when fresh provisions were impossible to find? They used salt. The Egyptians used a natural form of salt called natron to mummify their pharaohs, to ensure that their bodies would last not just years, but millennia. And it worked. We can see those mummies today intact after more than 3,000 years. Salted meat could last months in extreme climates. Salted fish crossed entire oceans without spoiling. Cheese preserved in salt survived for years. There are archaeological records of salt deposits more than 250 million years old, found in underground mines, completely intact, without any deterioration. 250 million years. No other element in nature has this quality of absolute permanence. And the wisdom of my ancestors took this physical property of salt and elevated it into a spiritual symbol of the highest order. If salt preserves in the physical world, then salt seals in the spiritual world. If salt prevents meat from rotting, then salt prevents blessing from evaporating. If salt maintains the integrity of everything it touches, then salt can maintain the integrity of your financial life, your household, your future. This is not poetry. This is law. In the book of Leviticus, in the 2nd chapter, the 13th verse, the text says, "With all your offerings you shall offer salt. You shall not allow the salt of the covenant of your God to be lacking from your offering." Notice what it says. Not the salt of the offering, the salt of the covenant of your God. That is something entirely different. In Hebrew, thought salt is not an ingredient. Salt is the signature on a contract. It is the seal on an agreement between the human being and the Creator. This concept appears again and again throughout the Hebrew Bible. In the book of Numbers, God tells Aaron, "It is an everlasting covenant of salt before the Lord." In the 2nd book of Chronicles, King Abijah declares before his army, "Do you not know that the Lord God of Israel gave the kingdom to David and his descendants forever by a covenant of salt?" The covenant of salt is not a poetic metaphor. In biblical tradition, it is the most permanent, the most inviolable, the most eternal type of agreement that exists between heaven and earth. And here is what you must understand. When you activate this covenant in your own life, when you perform this ritual with full awareness of what you are doing and why you are doing it, you are not begging for a favor. You are not asking the universe to make an exception for you. You are aligning yourself with a law that already exists, a law that has been operating since before your grandparents were born, a law that will still be operating long after you are gone. You are stepping into an ancient stream of abundance that has sustained families for generations, and you are saying, "I choose to be part of this. I choose to seal what is mine. I choose to close the cracks through which my blessing has been leaking." So let me tell you exactly how to do this. Pay attention to every detail, because in the spiritual world, precision matters, intention matters. The way you hold the salt, the words you speak, the place you put it, all of it carries meaning. This is not a game. This is not a magic trick for entertainment. This is a covenant, and covenants must be honored with respect. You will need 3 things. First, coarse sea salt, not table salt, not the refined processed salt that has been stripped of its minerals and its life force. You need salt that still carries the memory of the ocean salt, that has substance salt, that has weight. Second, a single coin. It does not matter which coin. It does not need to be silver or gold. It can be a penny, a nickel, a quarter, whatever you have. The value is not in the metal. The value is in what the coin represents, which is currency flow exchange, the movement of energy in the material world. Third, a glass jar, clear glass so you can see what is inside. It must be transparent. No metal containers, no plastic, no ceramic. Glass. Because glass, like salt, does not corrupt. Glass does not absorb. Glass holds without contamination. Now listen carefully to what you will do. Take the glass jar and fill it halfway with the coarse salt. As you pour the salt, you will speak these words out loud, not in your mind, out loud. You say, "As this salt does not decay, so my provision does not decay. As this salt preserves all it touches, so my income is preserved in this house. I seal the cracks. I close the openings. I activate the covenant of permanence over my finances." When you finish pouring the salt, you will take the coin and you will hold it in your right hand, not your left. In the mystical tradition, the right hand represents giving manifestation action in the physical world. You hold the coin and you say, "This coin represents the flow of abundance into my life. As I place it in this jar, I declare that money comes to me, stays with me, and multiplies under my care. What enters my hand does not leak away. What I earn remains and grows. Then you place the coin into the jar, pressing it down into the salt, so that it is half buried, half visible. The coin must touch the salt. It must be surrounded by it. This is the physical act of sealing. And when you are finished, you will seal the jar with its lid, and you will place it in a specific location in your home. Not just anywhere, not in a closet, not hidden away. You'll place it in the northeast corner of your main living space, or if you do not have a northeast corner, then place it on a shelf near the entrance of your home, where you can see it every day. This jar becomes a witness. It becomes a reminder. Every time you see it, you remember that you are under covenant. You remember that there is a seal over your household. But here is the part that almost no one talks about, the part that makes this ritual complete. At the end of the month, you will take one small pinch of that consecrated salt from the jar, and you will sprinkle it at the threshold of your front door, not inside the house, not outside in the street, right at the threshold, the line between the outer world and your inner sanctuary. And as you do this, you say, what is under covenant enters, what is not blessed stays out. This house is sealed. This house is protected. This house receives and holds. The threshold in Hebrew, mystical thought, is the border between chaos and order, between the noise of the world and the peace of your home. When you sprinkle consecrated salt at the threshold, you are making a spiritual declaration of protection and attraction simultaneously. You are saying, blessing come in, scarcity stay out. Now, why April? Why is this month above all others the most powerful time to perform this ritual? Because April corresponds to the Hebrew month of Nisan, and Nisan is not an ordinary month. It is the month in which the most transformative event in the history of my people occurred. The Exodus, the liberation from Egypt, the breaking of chains that had bound an entire nation for generations. The Talmud, the most important text of Jewish oral law, states this clearly. In Nisan, they were redeemed, and in Nisan, they will be redeemed in the future. The sages teach that the same power of liberation that operated in the first Exodus is not a one-time event buried in history. That power is still active in every Nisan, in every April. The portal of miracles opens. The gates of transformation, including and especially financial transformation, are more accessible in this month than at any other time of the year. And here is something that scholars of the Torah have pointed out for centuries. The Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim. And Mitzrayim comes from the root word Metzar, which means narrowness, limitation, constriction. Mitzrayim is not just a geographic location on a map. Mitzrayim is a state of mind. It is the mentality of the ceiling, the mentality that says, this is all I can achieve. This is where my reality ends. This is where my possibilities stop. The exodus from Mitzrayim, spiritually speaking, is the decision of the soul that says, I no longer accept this limit. I no longer stay in the narrow place. I no longer live with the mentality of someone who never has enough. The Brit HaMelach, performed in the month of Nisan in April, has a double potency that no other time of year can match. On one hand, you preserve what you have. You seal the cracks through which abundance has been escaping. You build the spiritual container that money needs in order to stay. On the other hand, you declare that you have already left Mitzrayim. You have already exited the scarcity mindset that was inherited, that was passed down, that kept you at the same economic level your entire life. Seal and release, preserve and expand. Those two actions together in the same ritual in the most powerful month of the Hebrew spiritual calendar is what makes this practice extraordinary. I want to tell you something that a woman once shared with me. She was of Sephardic origin, a businesswoman in her 70s whose family had maintained their prosperity intact across 3 generations, crossing different countries and cultures, starting practically from zero in each new place. She told me something I have never forgotten. In her family, the Brit HaMelach was not a ritual performed in moments of crisis when the money ran out and desperation arrived. It was a ritual of maintenance, of preventive preservation. They did it in Nisan at the beginning of the Hebrew New Year and at all the personal thresholds of the family. When a baby was born, when a new house was inaugurated, when a new business began. It was their way of saying, what I am starting, I start under the covenant of salt, under the seal of preservation, under the spiritual guarantee that what I build does not rot, does not evaporate, does not disappear without reason. And this is exactly what I am inviting you to do this month of April. Not as an act of desperation, not as a last resort before collapse, but as an act of consciousness, as a spiritual adult who understands that the economy of the home has visible dimensions and invisible dimensions, and that the invisible dimensions deserve the same attention, the same care, and the same intention as the visible ones. Because just as no one doubts that you need to make a budget, that you need to save, that you need to be intelligent with your expenses, there should also be no doubt that you need to activate the spiritual seals of prosperity. You need to align the energetic field of your home with abundance. You need to honor the ancient covenants that have sustained families who survived exiles, persecutions, destructions, and who absolutely always rose again with more than they had before they fell. It is not a coincidence that the people who have been most persecuted in the history of humanity are also the ones who have produced the greatest concentration of prosperity in relation to their population. It is not coincidence. It is direct consequence of a living, active, continuous relationship with the spiritual wisdom that sustains material life. And that wisdom is not exclusive to any ethnicity or any religion. It is a universal principle. The covenant of salt is a spiritual law that operates for any human being who activates it with genuine intention, with real knowledge, and with authentic faith. Now you have everything you need. You have the biblical foundation in Leviticus. You have the understanding of why salt is the most powerful seal of permanence that exists in nature. You have the explanation of why money escapes and how the covenant seals the cracks in the spiritual vessel. You have every detail of the ritual, the 3 elements, the exact words, the correct hand, the precise location. You have the closing of the cycle at the end of the month with the coin and the threshold. And you have the understanding of why this Nisan, this April, is the most powerful moment of the year to do it. There is no excuse not to do it. There are no exotic ingredients to search for. There is no prior knowledge you need to have. Salt, coin, glass, intention, covenant. That is all. And if you do it this month of April with full awareness of everything you have just learned, you'll be activating the same seal that has preserved the prosperity of some of the most resilient and successful families in the history of humanity. Not because you are special in a way that others are not, but because you chose to activate a spiritual law that already existed, that was already available, and that already had your name written in it. If this video reached you today, it was not an accident. In the Kabbalistic tradition, it is said that the soul receives the teaching it needs exactly at the moment it is ready to receive it. And if you made it this far to this point in the video, it is because something in you already knows that there is a level of prosperity you have not yet activated, a level that already belongs to you, a level that is waiting for you to do something concrete to unlock it. And now you know exactly what to do. Give this video a like if this teaching ignited something in you. Subscribe so that each new teaching of ancient wisdom reaches you directly without you having to search for it in the chaos of the world. And write right now in the comments, "My money has roots, it stays and multiplies." Write it. Do not leave it for later. That decree, written here in community with hundreds of souls who are on the same path of transformation, has a spiritual force that goes beyond what your logical mind can comprehend. When many souls decree the same truth together, that truth stops being a wish and becomes law in the spiritual world. And in the next video, we are going to go much deeper still. We are going to talk about the principle that the masters of this tradition consider the master key of all real and lasting prosperity. The principle that transforms not only what you have, but the way the entire universe perceives your relationship with abundance. Do not miss it. May the salt preserve your wealth. May the eternal covenant seal your economy. And may the abundance that already belongs to you flow into your home without obstacles and without measure.